Let's go now. A little life out here. What the hell's going on out here?
It's a lot of fun. Keep it fun.
Hello everybody, welcome to the UK Packers podcast. As usual, I'm your host at SteedyDNFL on Twitter, and of course follow the group at UK Packers, and it's YouTube TV. We're on YouTube again. So it's the second video podcast episode, which is two more than I thought I'd get to. So the last one went up, albeit after a while. Not being experienced in video editing, I had no idea that it took 7,000 gigabytes to save a video file, edit the video file, put the video file up. But I will endeavour to put the audio and the video up closer together going forward. So if anyone's listening, and by far the audio listeners way outweighs the video watchers at the moment. I think we've like 211 views on the YouTube. So go to youtube.com/UK Packers to see me in all my glory. Now, did I have the intro music too loud in my ear coming in? Of course I did. Is my ear bleeding? Yes, but only my right one. So I'm doing without the beats for the moment. And I'm just going to be rocking the sound sport, and I've got my fancy screens behind me, if anyone can see, which is the website ukpackers.co.uk. So I'm doing it right. I'm going to do a OTA update podcast. Now, why did I put off doing it before is because there is pretty much zero news about the OTAs. And my Grind My Gear section is kind of geared towards exactly just that. But let's get some of the Packer news out of the way before I delve feet first into OTAs. So the Packers are going to wear a decal on their helmet. We've seen this in the past. I think the Ravens did it. The Patriots did it for Robert Kraft's wife when she passed away. And now we're going to wear 15 as the decal on our helmet for the Packers. So, that's a really fitting tribute to Bart Starr, such an important player. We did a podcast fully dedicated to him, albeit, there's no way you could do Bart Starr justice. And in fact, behind me here in the podcast studio, there's a book, and I will be doing book reviews. So this is Bart Starr Quarterbacking, if you can see. So again, have I read it, and am I an adept quarterback? No, not really. It looks pretty cool. Such an old-timey book. But definitely I will give that a read. Now, I will have other book reviews coming up, and there's some books behind me if anybody's watching the video version. We've Instant Replay, The Vagabond Halfback. Now, The Vagabond Halfback is a book by Ralph Hickok, which I had Ralph on the podcast. So if anyone's keeping an eye on youtube.com/UK Packers, you'll see that I have an episode up about Paul Hornung. I said Hornung because I'm Irish. So I don't know. Is it Hornung or Horning? I know it's pronounced in the States Horning, but is that right? Because I know Aaron Rodgers is Aaron Rodgers. Irish surnames, Cahill. Wrong, it's Cahill. That's how it's actually supposed to be pronounced here back in the motherland. Shaughnessy, or Shaghennessy, as it's said sometimes, is Shocknessy, in actual fact, because we do get that from time to time. It's like, come over to Wisconsin and you try pronounce our place names, which I retort, you try pronounce our surnames. And that's, even first names like Blonid, Siobhan, Muirin, Alva, all those type of names. So I raise you your place names with our first and second names. So anyway, I digress. Paul Hornung is up, and I did an intro, and there's bloopers at the front of that one. Got a case of the giggles on that one. So Bart Starr. So the first home game that we have against the Vikings, they're going to honour Bart with a halftime ceremony, bring out some alumni players, bring out some players who he played with. Paul Hornung probably one of them. And they're going to really do a big show for him. So he's going to be laid to rest in a private ceremony, so that's not going to be open to the public. And Aaron Rodgers has already done interviews where he talks about what he means to him, the same Brett Favre, and they went down to his ceremony as well and shared stories about how Bart Starr used to actually write, handwritten letters and stuff like that to the guys. One of them was about how Brett Favre was wearing his cap, which was hilarious. And they're also donating 250 grand as well to the Bart Starr and Sherry Starr Foundation. So that's going to go to 4 different charities. So again, Bart's passing, incredibly sad. He had an awful lot of struggles really from 2014 when he really started to he suffered some strokes and stuff like that. Determined to come back for Brett Favre's jersey retirement, and he did that. And now they're going to honour him with putting the 15 on the helmet for the year. So it's going to be great to see some sort of ode to Bart on the helmets throughout the year. And from what we're hearing from Packers HQ, not UK Packers HQ, but Packers HQ, the offense is dynamic and what do they call it? Deceit, and I'll get into the exact phrase later. And if you can believe the hype, we're definitely going to win the Super Bowl this year. So, they're going to be lifting the Lombardi Trophy whilst having Bart Starr on the back of their helmets. So that's going to be great. So yeah, that's the Bart Starr news. So now, let's get into some Packers playing abroad. And unfortunately, it's not the international series. And there was some pretty alarming stuff about this. So the Packers are going to play the Raiders in the preseason. Now, to the people contacting and saying, because our group trip is to, I know, have you heard about the group trip? Have you said it yet? With this group trip that we have, we're going over week 7, Packers versus Raiders in Lambeau Field. And when the news came out to say that the preseason game against the Raiders was going to be in Winnipeg, one guy actually dropped it underneath their Instagram. This is in Canada now. As if we're going to be like, oh, drat, we can't do the group trip. No, it's the regular season trip that's over to Lambeau Field. So, again, it's not the first time that the Packers have played in Canada. So, Aaron Rodgers made a pretty alarming comment saying, I hope this doesn't sort of fulfill our international commitment now by going to Canada. That means that we won't have to play in the UK. So, an insider inbox with Mike and Wes, they came out and said that there's actually no requirement for the Packers to play an international series game. That's not what we're hearing over here. If every team has to play eventually. That's certainly what the commissioner said. So I kind of fell out of me standing when I heard that. But yeah, so look, it's not unheard of. 1997, the Packers played the Bills in Canada, and also the Packers played in Tokyo, in Japan, in what they dubbed as the American Bowl against the Kansas City Chiefs. And there's some great footage of the guys in Japan and the Japanese fans picking up the stuff. And in fact, we were in a Packers Life documentary all about the UK Packers. Go to our website or go to our Twitter and you can see it there. And it's a full documentary about how the group got started and their trip to Lambeau. So if you're thinking about coming on a trip to Lambeau, there's actually a documentary made about when we went over and fulfilled some dreams. And again, if you don't cry at that, you are a monster. Okay? And that's Karen Wood's story when she went over. Big shout out to Karen. So, yeah, they went to Tokyo, and there's some great quotes by Reggie White, and I'd love to bring them to you in video form. I found them on a really obscure kind of link where they have a video, so I'd love to add that into the video podcast if I can. But I tried to find it on YouTube as well, but if you type in Packers and Tokyo, you just get a bunch of people being shoved onto a train. So it's just a bunch of people on their morning commute being crammed in like sardines, which is it funny? Yes, it's funny. Is it relevant to a Packers podcast? Not so much. So yeah, Rodgers' comment was, I'm excited to get up there. It's fun to travel. They haven't been to England yet, but some of the fans want to go to England. Now, he did say, I'm sure there's fans up there because there's fans everywhere. Now, if he doesn't know the presence of the UK Packers at this stage, mostly because we've been badgering his agents to try to get him on the podcast, right? But I think if we do get him over, lads, we can give him a good time, because he said he came over for the Game of Thrones. And one of the highlights for him was, because they asked him at the locker room, what's his experience like on Game of Thrones, because he's used to the big athlete that people come to see him, and what was it like being a big athlete going to see that. And he turned around and said, his best experience was the Irish taxi man who was a boxer, and all of his stories. Aaron, I've got stories for days, bro. So if you want to come on the podcast, I've got stories about bin bags, climbing over fences with bin bags, the time I accidentally joined a boy band. I've got loads of stories that I have for you, Aaron. Don't you worry about stories. So come on over. So I better not count it as sort of an away game, and that, they're kind of happy with it. And as well as that, if they do end up coming over to the UK, how does everybody feel about the trying to buy tickets for Wembley or Tottenham Hotspurs? Everyone have a good experience with the buying of the tickets this year? Do you know what? Anytime I see an NFL UK tweet now, all that goes through my head, and some people will get it, some people won't get it, is don't let this tweet distract you from... If anybody doesn't know what I'm talking about, go to any NFL UK tweet, and it's at the bottom of it. Yeah, some people, including our fans, very unhappy with how the season tickets went. I'm not going to get to the ins and outs of it. Some people had no problem whatsoever, and loads of people holding out hope that the Packers will still come over. But look, in the meantime, if you don't want to blow a ton of money on overnight hotels in London and tickets in London, come over to Lambeau Field with us. 1,230 quid per 2 people share, and we'll get you over to Lambeau Field to see the Raiders take on the Packers and get defeated mercilessly. Absolutely smash-oled in Lambeau Field. And again, you can't beat the first experience in Lambeau Field. It's absolutely fantastic. So I guess it's about time I get on to all that's been happening in Packerland for the OTAs. And all of the buzz that goes around with it. I've got copious notes. I've watched every single video that's on Packers.com, all the locker room interviews. And will I do grind my gears? No, I leave grind my gears for the moment. But let's delve into Packers OTA news. Okay, so Packers OTA. So what I did was I watched every single video on Packers.com, all the locker room videos, all of the daily updates, the Packers official Packers Unscripted podcast. And by the way, can I just stop at this point and say that as knowledgeable as the lads are on Packers.com, and they're just abundantly knowledgeable. One of my all-time highlights is when Wes comes on and does his finger pointing and stuff like that. I mean, that national treasure is Wes Hodkwitz. National treasure. That's all I'm saying. So I sifted through all of the stuff, all of the articles, all the ESPN pieces. And again, big shout out to Rob Domofsky. Massive fan of Rob's work on ESPN. It's no BS. It's straight to the point. He gets exclusives like, talking to Mike McCarthy and all the rest. So what I tried to do was sift through all of that and come to the nub of some of the stuff that I found was useful, because an awful lot of it is waffle. One thing that I found is with the rookies, they tended to be quite raw when in front of the camera, which we got. Even last year, I was commenting on some of the coaches who were kind of new to the limelight and not being used to being examined. One of them who has since gone off to Arizona, I believe. I think, but he was quite talkative and stuff like that, and it's nice to see. Sometimes it's a breath of fresh air. So what I did was try to sift through and pull out the non-BS stuff. Now, Aaron Rodgers' comments, let's focus on these first. This was in a piece by Rob Domofsky from ESPN. It was all over the Packers website as well, talking about wanting to get Davante Adams more targets. So last year, he was the second most targeted wide receiver. Julio Jones was the first with 170 targets. Davante Adams was 169. He came out with about 1,300 yards, which was a monster year, especially after getting that big contract. You know, there was people at that time wondering, wrongly, talking about the contract numbers, talking about the amount of concussions and all the rest, and would he ever get above the 1,000-yard mark? In the history books, certainly in the Packers kind of, media guide, it does talk about the 1,000-yard receivers, and it's a very important mark to come to. So, he gets 1,300 yards. He comes down with 111 catches, which is fantastic. He was only 2 shy, in fact, of Sterling Sharp in 1993, and Sterling Sharp was targeted 189 times. Sterling Sharp, again, should be in the Hall of Fame. That's a conversation for a different day, and I'll go into that maybe a little bit later. Now, people, so let me just pause there, and I've looked into it. So people say that what stops him from getting into the Hall of Fame, like his brother, who's the tight end, Shannon, is the fact that he played for such little time, 6 seasons, but there's people in there with 5 and 6 seasons. Some of them are absolute superstars, like Ernie Nevers. But anyway, does he deserve it? Yes. Back to Davante Adams. So Aaron Rodgers says that he wants to get Davante Adams more targets. And then people criticized him and said, well, if you give him more targets, is that really the way to go? And he said, well, the dude is always open. And we've seen everybody comment on Davante Adams, how he's after taking a leadership role. And that's certainly what I'm taking from OTAs, is that A, Aaron Rodgers wants to get him the ball more. B, he was a superstar last year, and that's going to continue. His footwork is amazing. And also, Davante Adams is after coming out and saying he's the most coachable guy in the locker room. And Matt LaFleur is coming over to him and chatting to him after routes and stuff like that. And we've seen that happen with Jimmy Graham as well. I'll get on to Jimmy Graham now in a minute. So how fantastic is that Davante Adams has a monster contract, has the year where he gets to the Pro Bowl. He's 2 catches away from breaking Sterling Sharp's record. Actually, he had 112, not 130. 113 would have beaten it. He was 134 yards short of Jordy Nelson's record of the most receiving yards in a season. So again, he's expected to do even more in this explosive offense as well, although they call it run heavy. So Aaron Rodgers is calling for him to have the ball more. So the criticisms there have been like, do you really want to go down that route where we become one-dimensional? And that's a question that they asked them at the locker this time. I mean, they were so pass intensive. One guy was saying that there were 70% of all of their offensive plays last year were pass plays. So, do you really want to get the ball to Davante Adams more? Now, I agree with Aaron Rodgers. If Davante Adams is open all the time, well, then the aim of the game is to gain more yards. If you keep targeting one guy and he still remains to be open, then keep targeting him. Now, I can see the criticism when it comes down to the fact that, these young guys, MVS, ESB, even Gmo to a degree, Jake Kumaro, Trevor Davis. When you talk about these guys, if you go and in game time situations, take away their targets, take away their receptions, and you give that to Davante Adams, the team as a whole wins, but them individually, they don't get that pressure cooker style game time, oh Jesus, here comes the ball thing. And I know that sounds silly and it sounds amateur, right? But Randall Cobb was saying in that dagger play against the Bears that time, when the ball was coming, as experienced as he was, when it was coming down, he was like, oh my God, don't drop it. So wide receivers, no matter how experienced they are, still face that moment, So it's the same with these receivers. If you keep targeting one guy, you kind of neglect the other guys. And God forbid if anything happened, which it did happen during the concussion period that Davante Adams went through, you're going to have to depend on these guys. Now, do I think that's going to be a problem? No, I don't think that's going to be a problem. I think it's all going to be fine. Do I think they're going to target Davante Adams more? If he's open, absolutely. Now, one thing that we've seen with this Matt LaFleur offense, and again, another take about it I take away from OTAs, is this whole thing of, bunch formations, combination formations. It's the sense that they overload one side, and it really puts the defense off, because if the defense line up straight across them and use that sort of press man coverage, well, then what ends up happening is they end up tripping over each other. Now, there's certain, technical names on that, and I got into that in the radio, actually, when I do Sunshine 106.8, which is what the Rams do. So he's bringing in exactly what the Rams do. So anybody who was questioning whether, this was the guy who, although he'd worked with Tennessee, although he worked with LA, was he going to bring in that type of stuff? We see now that he absolutely is. And this sort of, they asked Tramon Williams about it as well at the locker. They sort of pride themselves on sort of deceit, deception, and all that type of stuff. Is that true? And Tramon Williams came out and said, yes, that's true. They deceive us all day today, was one of the things that he said in one of the interviews. So certainly, it's living up to the hype of what they said it was going to be. But at the same token, there was interviews with Corey Linsley, David Bakhtiari, Aaron Rodgers, and the defensive guys, and they really did say that, look, it's still football at the end of the day. It's still playing football. So the fundamentals and all that stuff are going to sort of remain the same. But it's fantastic to hear reports of Davante Adams and Alex Whitted, who's the new wide receivers coach, who is credited with sort of getting big performances out of young players, that he's after coming out and saying that Davante Adams is just a consummate professional, that he has tremendous values, that he's the leader in the locker room, and that's exactly what you wanted. Now, they asked Davante, was that a conversation that you had? Did they come over to you and ask you to step up? And he said, no, that's natural, that's part of his game. And we certainly heard that last year also, that he stepped up. So it's fantastic to see that sort of veteran voice, because behind him, I think there's plenty of depth, but there's plenty of inexperience too. And another thing I take away from OTAs is they asked Davante Adams about Randall Cobb and the fact that they're after losing a slot guy. And, that's where he played. And he said that Geronimo Allison was in there and he was playing an awful lot of slot. And he said that Geronimo Allison is even taller than he is, yet he's the one who's playing the slot. So, I mean, how explosive is that? That usually you expect those short, zippy guys to be in the slot. But when you have a big wide receiver, it kind of acts almost like a tight end in that position. So if you have Jay Sternberger, you have Robert Tonyan, Jimmy Graham, and Geronimo Allison, and they're, whatever formation that they're playing, if you have all of those guys roaming the middle of the field, if you're going to expect sort of a slot cornerback to cover these guys, especially with their height and quickness, and if they improve on their routes, and Jimmy Graham, as Aaron Rodgers says, is expected to have a bounce back year, it's just, that's absolutely devastating. And then you have plays that are going to come from the backfield as well. You're going to have those lads out in front potentially as blockers. So it's incredibly exciting stuff, and you can see that this offense, they didn't add to it because they kind of expected that what they had just talent in abundance, and you can kind of see that, and the way it's shaping up is really exciting. And we've seen big massive plays happening as well, that sort of Aaron Rodgers like visibly looked super excited about when they asked him about. So again, it's great to see Devontae said that he's highly coachable. It's good to see that what Matt LaFleur does is he runs out and gives them coaching. And it's good to see, when we saw the Mike Holmgren documentary and he was talking about Steve Young and Joe Montana and all the rest, and that those lads came to him and said to him, I want you to train me up. I want you to be tough on me. And it's good to see that the Packers are doing this as well. So yeah, I can see merits to it, and I can see people getting sort of apprehensive when you talk about targeting the passing game. And also, I think it's pretty interesting that you have a quarterback who comes out and publicly says that he wants to pass the ball more after such a pass-intensive offense last year. We were always criticised in Green Bay for, the strength of our passing game. We had no real remnants of a running game until Eddie Lacy came in. And then we sort of had a credible threat. Now, I don't know if that's going to do a disservice to the likes of James Starks, who was a fantastic player for the Packers. But when Eddie Lacy came in, we can all acknowledge that stuff changed. And in fact, our O-line had to adjust to breaking open running lanes and stuff. So it's amazing to see that on a system that predicates the success of the run, that you have a quarterback publicly saying that he wants to pass more. You'll have all of the people out there go, oh, well, they're already at odds. No, they're definitely not at odds. They're going to work together on that philosophy. But I just thought it was an interesting sort of point where this is an offense that's sort of, what did they keep saying? There's a healthy balance of run and pass. Yet here is Aaron Rodgers asking for more pass. So I guess that brings us then to some of the comments that Aaron Rodgers said at his locker. An awful lot of this was kind of jokey stuff. He's been super goofy as well at his locker, having fun, taking pop shots at other quarterbacks, talking about, at least they have one talent that they're better than him with. He talks about, like what I was saying, that he was kind of taking the mickey, that him and David Bakhtiari discussed it, it got into the Scotch thing. He's an awful lot more looser at the locker room, which is fantastic to see now. He's kind of goofing around and joking around. He's kind of taking the mickey out of Matt LaFleur. He's reading out statements and stuff like that. So it's good to see that rapport there. It remains to be seen what it is like on game day and how intense it becomes, especially when the pressure is on, to see how these two get along. They did ask him about the relationship and say, is that something that you've tried to work on? How often do you meet outside and all the rest of that? And Aaron Rodgers sort of joked like, even meeting him inside the locker room is enough. He sees him enough as it is. So it's nice to see him having fun, because we had this kind of joke going back a couple of seasons now, that if Aaron came out and he was happy and joking and throwing the ball around and goofing about, well, then they were going to win. It's a foregone conclusion. So when Aaron Rodgers is having fun, he's loose. And we did see some people coming out and say that Aaron Rodgers sees the field differently. He comes out and he can see things that nobody else sees, and that's why everyone leeches off him. So let's have a look at the comments that Aaron Rodgers said about other players. On MVS, he says that I think Marquez had a fantastic spring and really stepped up as a guy who can be an every down player. So why is that important? Well, if Geronimo Allison is getting reps in the slot, well then is MVS kind of the number 2 outside guy? You would imagine so. Of course, it's going to be a training camp battle. They asked Jake Kumaro, because he proved himself last year, then this year, is it easier for him now because he's laid that stuff on tape, he made the roster? And he said no, in a way it's harder because he has to sort of live up to that again and prove that again. So if that's what Aaron's saying about MVS, it's in his hands to, get up there, learn what he can of this new offense, off Devontae Adams as a leader, have Gmo play the slot and somebody outside. They're probably going to mishmash all kinds of things around. But MVS has a genuine shot at being the number 2-3 guy. Then he talks about Jimmy Graham. He says, I expect a big bounce back year from Jimmy. He's healthy. He's feeling good. This offense, I think, fits him and his body type. And I'm not going to shy away from throwing the ball to Devontae. So he's sort of saying, like, I'm still going to target Devontae Adams. I'm not going to force it to Jimmy Graham like people are assuming, if they're asking him an awful lot about chemistry with Jimmy Graham. Jimmy Graham, as little as he talks to the media, did come out at his charity event and say that, it was below his expectations, that he wants to do better and that he will do better. And, we've seen, I don't know where I heard it, maybe it was on the Packers Unscripted podcast where they were talking about that Matt LaFleur was out sort of, trying to perk Jimmy Graham up almost because he was really, really down on himself for making mistakes and he wants to be perfect. And that's one thing that I will say, which is an interesting point about this offense and about this new system. is that it's a real leveler. You can have Jimmy Graham getting frustrated at himself because he's not getting it, or that he didn't run the route as he wanted to, or whatever, or he drops a pass. And Matt LaFleur is coming out, and fair play to Matt LaFleur as well for coming out and having the strength, because he's a young guy, to talk to veterans like that and coach them up and really get involved. And before he got that injury, he was going out throwing balls and all the rest. So this is a real leveler in the sense that anybody who's anybody now can really have a shot at making the roster. And we've seen that happen, and we see that happen in Premier League football clubs where a new manager will come in and he'll see a guy, and someone that just was sort of a walk-on or a shoe-in isn't a shoe-in anymore because the manager has seen something else in somebody else. So on the defense, fair enough, because it's Mike Pettine's second year. So again, maybe he's going to bring in some more complexity, which the new guys are going to have to catch up on. But with the offense, everybody is in with a shot. And fair play to Aaron Jones too, when they start talking to him in his locker, talking to him about, what did he think of the prospect about catching more balls or being a bigger part of the offense? And was he aware, they asked him, of the call to get Aaron Jones the ball more, which he said he was. How could he not? He'd have to be living under a rock. It's Jamal Williams has a chance too, and that's what Aaron Jones was saying. Is like, Jamal's here, and of course we have Dexter in there as well, and Capri Bibbs, they say don't sort of sleep on him too. So everybody has a shot of doing something explosive. So Jimmy Graham, Aaron Rodgers expects to have a bounce back year, but look, I've discussed it before. If you go back into Jimmy Graham's tape in prior years, year one he's getting used to it, year two he kind of makes that jump up. Now I don't know whether that's a thing in Jimmy Graham, that he sort of doesn't catch on as fast as he wants in the first year, and is this change in offensive philosophy going to be another sort of effective resetting, and will we see similar numbers to last year? But remember, Jimmy Graham was carrying injuries too last year, and I know the narrative, like, funnily enough, always is, well, he was injured last year, this year's going to be better. You don't know if he's going to get injured or not, so that's something that we'll have to sort of wait and see. So I just thought those comments were kind of interesting, more so about the fact that Jimmy Graham is pretty hard on himself. Now let's talk about Jair Alexander. So this to me is kind of a non-story, because every player will come out and say, I'm going to be a Pro Bowler, I'm going to be an All-Pro. Now one thing about this sort of locker room interview that they're talking about, and is in the media and is on Packers.com, is where he's kind of a bit subdued. I don't know why that was. Maybe the dude is tired from practicing, maybe doesn't want to deal with the media and stuff like that, but he's always bright and bubbly, and we saw the kind of promos happening before. But he comes out and he says, he wants to do better than last year. It was a good jump off point. So the Packers had 7 takeaways last year, 7 interceptions, of which Jair Alexander got 1, whereas the league average was 13. So it's something that they certainly need to do better. Now they allude to that moment against that game against the Rams where he had 5 passes defensed. All year he had 15 passes defensed and 1 interception. So he led the team in that regard with the passes defensed. So, or defended, if that's annoying people who are listening to the podcast. So people like to point out that game. He's an aggressive player, and like what Larry McCarron says in his sort of, rock reports, which are fantastic as well on Packers.com, is that, if you have a rookie that is depended upon to give the motivational speeches, to play like he did, you've absolutely struck gold. And that's what we have done with Jair Alexander. He's absolutely fantastic. Great personality, great leadership. Is annoyed when you call him small. He likes to say his average height, but so do I. So, he wants to do better, but do people want to do better? Do they say that every year? Yes, they do. Do they say that they're even healthier than they've ever been? Of course they are, because they've had the summer off. Now, one thing I note that does come out of his quotes is, talking about his performance and how incredible it was last year and how he led the league in pass breakups and all the rest. But if you're breaking up that many passes, I think the expectation on Jair Alexander is the fact that he's going to get his hand on more interceptions. And that's what he's going to focus on. And that's one thing that Rashan Gary has, after coming out and saying when they had his interview, he was saying that, the expectation is that they go after the ball more. So that's one thing that we sort of expect from Jair Alexander, is the fact that he should be able to go out and put his hands on the ball, get more interceptions. He did have one that was called back. And as well as that, we want to see Kevin King and Jair Alexander sort of match up together. Now, it could have been a case that Jair Alexander was targeted more because they saw him as a rookie, and a small rookie at that. Sorry, Jair. And maybe they targeted him more, which is why he saw more production. Will they move away from Jair Alexander because now they have some of his tape and they know that I don't know if we can call him a shutdown corner yet, but certainly him and King, if they do result in being shutdown corners, then we have Adrian Amos and Darnell Savage Jr. at safety. Well, then, we could have an absolutely ridiculous defensive backfield. And then if you deal with what we have up front with the Smiths, with Rashan Gary, with Kenny Clark, Mike Daniels, Fackrell, Oren Burks, who people are calling a freak in nature, and I'll get on to quotes about him now in a second, from Blake Martinez. I mean, this could be an absolutely ridiculous defense. So we see the quotes come out about Oren Burks when they talk about James Crawford. So here's a guy who ended up in an article on Packers.com. He's Charles Woodson's nephew. This is a guy who's an inside linebacker. He played safety, so they see him as kind of having a very high ceiling. He's supposed to get more reps. Brian Gutekunst is after coming out saying that he hopes that he sees his workload increase. Now, according to an article on the Insider Inbox, the lads were saying that, when does Crawford get to see playing time? And they said, well, he gets to see playing time, unfortunately, if someone gets injured. So the guys that we expect to see at inside linebacker are Blake Martinez and Oren Burks. So Blake Martinez has said about Oren Burks that he's a freak in nature, that he has every ability in the book. Larry McCarron showed tape on him and showed that he's good against the run, he's good in coverage, and he also used to play safety. And Gutekunst says that he wants to see a significant increase in playing time for him as well. So, will James Crawford get a chance? I'm sure he will. I'm sure he'll be rotated in to give the guys a break. And again, we've seen that Blake Martinez is after getting rave reviews again in OTAs by people saying that he's the quarterback of the defense, and that's how Aaron Rodgers referred to him as well. But we did see Oren Burks get a chance in OTAs to sort of take up that role of the mic as well. So, that's exciting times at inside linebacker. Tramon Williams, again, is on record coming out saying that there's new energy, new spirit, that they're all in it together and that they're feeling good right now. So it's really good to see that, he's the older face in the locker room. He's coming out. He can feel the energy. And again, he came out and said that the offense were very deceptive in some of their stuff as well. We saw Crawford come down with an interception from Boyle, and Boyle sort of, jostling at the interview time saying, dude, it's only one interception. Can you give me a break? So the mood in the building seems really, really good, and people seem happy and they seem energized, and Matt LaFleur seems like he's absolutely doing the business. So Elton Jenkins, he's playing guard in camp, played center in college. They interviewed him and said, where can you play? He says anywhere. So that's pretty promising. From that regard, I mean, he looks like a big dude. And speaking of that, then Aaron Rodgers is coming out and they asked him, about certain people and to pick certain people out, various times. And he talks about Billy Turner, and he says that he's a massive dude, great dry sense of humor, and he feels kind of reassured with him up front. So that's really reassuring as well, that he's a bit of a monster. Now, Larry McCarron gets into his play as well, and it shows that he's an absolute animal. I mean, how he can sort of manhandle people. And as well, Aaron Rodgers was asked about Elton Jenkins and how he's getting on. And Aaron, I think, felt kind of that there was maybe an ulterior motive, or that there was a story coming down the line. So he said, don't judge old linemen by what you see now without pads, because when they have pads on, they've something to grip. And, they do a bit better, they can get underneath. So don't sort of judge them in OTAs. Wait till the pads are on and all the rest. So Sternberger is another interesting one. So this is the tight end that they brought in. He says that he's learning from tight end Jimmy Graham. That's kind of a non-story. But they asked him about his blocking ability, and by his own admission, he said that he's more of a receiving tight end, and that when it comes to blocking, he never really was asked to do it before, and he's probably a bit wet around the ears with it. So that's something that he's interested to sort of take on. So, watch this space with that, because we've Jimmy Graham. This guy's supposed to be the successor in time. He's even in his diapers, his nappies, wearing Packers jerseys, so it sort of seemed preordained. So here's a guy who, Jimmy Graham's been criticised for his blocking, and here's a guy who says that he's never really had to block before. Now, in that interview with him at the locker room, people were saying, look, we've watched your tape, we know you can block, but how do you feel about it? And that's what he came out and said. So I've all of the sort of expectation that he's going to be good and he's going to be a good blocker, but it's going to take him time to get used to it as well. So how they sort of refer to it is deceive and deception. with this offense, and you know, people are sort of saying that the whole time. Another thing, so Aaron Jones' comment is that the coach is marrying the run and the pass. Devontae Adams marrying the run and the pass. So again, this is some sort of mantra that he's saying, that he wants to marry the two. So you know, keep defenses honest, to sort of, you know, play action, and probably throw it more to Aaron Jones and Jamal Williams as well. A bit of wheel route action. As well. So they asked Aaron Rodgers too, I mean, is he going to be playing in preseason? And he says, I hope not. You know, but he says it's probably going to be more than 20 snaps. So, you know, the people up in Winnipeg in the IG Stadium, you're probably going to see Aaron Rodgers tug out a little bit more and play more in the preseason, which, you know, do we need any more reason to look forward to preseason? Because again, it swings around. People give out about it and say that it's trash, which it's very hard to read into what goes on during preseason. But we can certainly be more excited if more starters are playing, and also have our hearts on our mouth to hope that no one gets injured. That's important too. Okay, so I guess this is the grind my gears section. I don't know if it warrants the jingle, because I get the fact that, you know, it's the off season and it's difficult, because I create content here for podcasts, and I kind of like to use this time to delve into history, book reviews, sort of other little interesting tidbits, sort of top 10s and stuff like that. So I get that it's difficult. And again, this is done not on a full-time basis, although it definitely seems like a full-time basis. And I sort of feel for, and I've said it before, reporters that have to cover the team, and that's what they get paid to do. So they end up doing deep dives on players and their families. And also, the only chance that they get to write a story is at the locker room. They have to ask these players questions. They only get a certain amount of time to ask the questions, and all of that's fine. And I do sympathise with them. And an awful lot of these people, super professional and all the rest. Another one that they asked Aaron Rodgers was, "Oh, Matt LaFleur says this. Do you agree with what he said?" And like, I don't think do you really think Aaron Rodgers is going to turn around and go, "What? No." You know, like, he's going to agree with him now. He was in kind of a silly mood, kind of a goofy mood. So he's kind of having a bit of fun with it and laughing. But like, for instance, if I was a player, I would be totally messing with them, right? If they said to me, "Oh, Matt LaFleur came out and said that, the relationship's really good, and that your philosophy is all about the pass, and he's trying to work more of the run in, and that you were actually a big fan of the play action. Is that true?" I'd love to come out and say, "Matt said what? Did he? Matt's a liar. That's it. I'm sick of this." And I'd throw my helmet down and I'd say, "I'm going up to Matt's office to sort this out." I mean, you definitely just try and mess with them, and the reporters be like, "Oh, no." But the thing is sometimes you hear them ask a question and you can almost feel their hands over the keyboard like this, waiting for the answer. And if they turn around and say, that wasn't great. "Oh, Aaron Jones says last year was terrible with 70%, and he's looking forward to this new sort of blend of marrying the pass with the run." You know, and you kind of get what you ask for. But then again, I mean, what do you ask players about? You know, sports reporting is difficult, I guess. Especially after a game and you say, "Oh, well, what happened in that game?" It's like, oh, well, we're all sitting there watching it, you know. I do really enjoy, what the guys do when they analyse the game. There's a good few guys on Twitter that do it. The guys on Packers.com do it. Larry does a great job of breaking down the X's and O's. And Mike Spofford has a way of just zeroing in on the play and saying, "Oh, I like this play because on the offensive line this happened." And I'm like, "Oh my God, I didn't even see that." So they're fantastic. And it must be so hairy to have to cover the team in the off season, and try to come up with some sort of story that's, makes people want to click on their website and listen and all the rest. So that's why I haven't really covered OTAs up to now, because an awful lot of the stuff that's been said, has no real bearing or anything, and we really have to see how it plays out. So, I'm going to plug the trip again really, really quickly. So we're going over to see the Week 7 game against the Oakland Raiders. There's still spots available for the trip. I'd love you to come along. Be absolutely fantastic. So flying out on the Friday, coming back really late on the Monday, so you get a good bit of time in Green Bay, and it's going to be an absolute hoot. So just contact info@touchdowntrips.com or go to the website ukpackers.co.uk. And yeah, look, make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel if you're enjoying the videos. There's more history podcasts coming, and I'm going to create a playlist so that you can find out all about who Ray Nitschke was, who Paul Hornung was. I'm going to be doing book reviews and stuff like that as well. So there's really exciting stuff coming, and hopefully I'll be able to work on more sort of visual stuff as well. because the YouTube stuff, I'm having a lot of fun, to be honest. It's kind of a blast, and it's good to be able to reach out to people and people to see me and see who I am, and see who the group is. And as well as that, when we start having our regular season meetups, well, then we can put sort of videos of those meetups online. We're going to go out and get fan opinions as well. So if you have predictions for the game, we'd love to get those out there. Maybe do more challenge videos and stuff like that. So yeah, it's exciting times. So anyway, I'll park it there for this week. More exciting stuff yet to come. I have been at SteeDDNFL on Twitter. Give me a follow. I always like to banter back and forward and talk Packers. And of course, follow the group at UK Packers. Follow us on Instagram at UK Packers. We've Facebook as well, and there's a private group on Facebook that you can get into. And you can chat with other Packer fans as well, without any Vikings fans diving on and trying to attack you for having an opinion. And if you have any questions, go to the website and you can see that there's a little chat button here behind me. So just go to that chat. That'll come through directly to us. And also info@ukpackers.co.uk. And I think that's it for this week, guys. It's been a blast, as always. Do make sure that you subscribe, hit like, because it really helps us out, and leave a comment in the section below of any observations that you have, any opinions that you have on the Packers, and kind of use it as a mini forum. But until next week, lads, ladies, go Pack Go, and it's goodbye.